Hello and welcome to Open Minds UFO Radio. I'm your host, Alejandro Rojas, and I am here with my good friend, Martin Lumberjack Willis.
You never know what you're going to say, and I just told him, I'm actually, for the listening audience, wondering, no, it's not just because I live in Maine, but I'm on the road today, and I try to find Wi-Fi, and I did find it at a Lowe's lumber and all that, and I'm sitting on a pile of lumber right outside the door so I can get a Wi-Fi signal.
That's so funny. Well,
Hence the lumberjack.
Yeah. Thank you for going to such great efforts. And be careful.
Yes. I know. I might buy something. Yeah.
So,
or I might get hauled away with the lumber.
Yeah, that's the scary part. So, our show today, our guest today is Lee Speigel. Exciting for me because it's always fun to talk to him. And,
yes.
Of course, when we have him on, it means we're usually catching up on some UFO stuff, which is what we're doing. But we're also catching up on the super exciting project he's currently working on, which is this documentary with James Fox. And it doesn't even have a title. We'll talk about some of the titles that they've used, or one of the big titles they used in the past, and why, but how the scope of this project has greatly increased since that time. So, yeah, very exciting.
It is, yeah. And when you have the budget that they've had to work with, they can just do things right and take their time. And, James has made, two of the greatest films, I think, in ufology. And I'm sure this is supposed to surpass that. So I'm really excited to see it myself.
Yeah, and that would be saying something because, like you said, he's made two of the best. But, and we'll hear from Lee today, it sounds like they are on track to do something even better.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Cool stuff.
I'm hoping he teases at least the opening of that movie.
He does. He's very teasy in the interview.
Yeah.
He's a teaser, that guy.
I know. What a guy.
UFO news. That's what we're here to talk to during the first segment of the show. What you got for me there, buddy?
Well, I'm going to, usually I read stories and things like that, but actually I'd like to report on, I was this weekend, just got back late last night, early morning, from it's right across from Pennsylvania, right next to Philly. It's Cherry Hill, New Jersey, at the MUFON Symposium. So I was there for the event. The issue was I went, for two reasons. First of all, to see and talk. They had this one-on-one with Luis Elizondo, like a dinner you could actually buy a ticket for. And also he spoke. So I went for that. And also I went to see Selma Siddick, one of the Ariel School students, wonderful gal. So I went for those reasons. Now, I got to tell you, going south I left Boston at 10 a.m., and my GPS said I would arrive in Cherry Hill at 2:30 p.m. So as I'm driving, it gets longer and longer and longer. Then it got to 7 o'clock, and oh no, I was worried I was going to miss Luis Elizondo, and I sure did. I didn't get there till 10:30.
10:30?
Yes, I missed everything. There was the rain and the traffic. It was just sitting. I have, a couple of videos of me just sitting, at the George Washington Bridge, just parked there for like 2 hours.
Oh my gosh. So 8 hours longer than you expected.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I was really discouraged by that, but I did. Luckily, I had a wonderful conversation and with Luis Elizondo. just in the hallway, in the hotel. We just talked, and I broke the ice. Said, I'm a friend of Alejandro Rojas. He's on my show. I'm on his show. And he goes, "Oh, that guy." He says, "I had lunch with him." He said, "What a great guy. He really thinks the world of you. Thinks a lot of you." So anyway, so he and I had this wonderful conversation. It was about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer or so, but mostly about antiques. We never talked UFOs the entire time. He's an avid collector, and I really into a lot of the things that he collects. So anyway, it was a great conversation. But I was saving all my questions for him. You and I spoke about questions for that night, the one-on-one, situation. And then I saw him outside, quite a bit with the phone, talking on the phone and hanging up, calling someone else and calling and calling. He looked kind of uneasy. And next thing you know, he was gone. He had to leave for an emergency. So that event of the one-on-one, the dinner one-on-one conversations never happened. So never got to ask him those questions.
What a bummer. Well, I hope everything's okay. Like you didn't have any kind of family issue.
Yeah, I know. No one really had any details about it that they would share anyway. So, and then of course you had the conspiracy people talking, in the hallway saying, "Oh yeah, the government pulled him away, didn't want anyone to get too close." Now, I didn't get to see his talk. Some people say that there wasn't really too much revealed. In particular, most people said that, but there was other opinions. There's someone else, Randy Nickerson, who you know very well. Thought that this whole situation was groundbreaking, and he was very optimistic by, the whole situation with Elizondo being there at the MUFON symposium and all that. So, that was good.
I've heard a little bit of feedback like that as well, and I'm just really curious. I can't wait to see the talk. I wasn't able to yet. I was going to watch the live stream, but I couldn't. And I wonder, because I don't know, this is a historic situation, especially for our field. So it's almost like, him speaking in person. Like I said, it's historic for this field. It's almost like anything he says is really important. So I wonder, it makes me curious. I think some people had some huge expectations that probably weren't met. But I'm so curious to hear his talk.
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with expectations. They thought, something was going to be revealed that no one else would hear, or something along those lines, or something like something that he had not already spoken about would be spoken about for the first time. And I suppose none of that happened. I didn't see it. I didn't hear much about it otherwise. Yeah. Other than what I had mentioned already.
Because I don't know if you heard much about it. The Coast to Coast episode he did recently with George Knapp was pretty good, and he did reveal a few things there. And I think that, for these sort of things, like what we'll do is at the Congress is have somebody interview him, and that probably would have been a good idea. He probably would have been, he would have revealed more. Like, the interviewer would have been able to ask some more pointed questions and maybe coax him into sharing some more juicy stuff.
Speaking of juicy stuff, I'd like to talk about, I do have, it's actually on my website, podcastufo.com, if I can do a little plug of that. But I have a video interview of that I did at that location with Selma Siddick and Randy Nickerson. And the first interview I did with her, I had a lot of criticism about certain things, and some of it was good criticism.
Well, you had technical problems, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Terrible. But anyway, this interview, I had my HD camera all set up, and it's really great. It's on YouTube, and as well, you can see it on my website. But I'm telling you, she is just an extraordinary. She just articulates the event so well. And so the question that someone said, hey, she didn't have any telepathic communication, and other people did. Don't you think that's a really good question to ask her? So I did. I asked her that question. Why do you think you didn't have it? And she kind of revealed that maybe there's something she doesn't know about, that maybe it was really hard for her to break her gaze, the eye lock that she had with this creature. And she said it was exhausting, and it was really hard for her to do that. But once she did, she kind of got away to go check on her brother and sister to see if they were okay. But she describes the moment that this encounter was happening with the being, and it's really fascinating. So, and she's kind of afraid to do any regression hypnotherapy right now, but she may someday.
Did you make it to her talk?
I did, yes. And
how
I
was
got to
that?
tell you, it was good, but I got to tell you, I like the interview I did with her much better.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Just because I think more was revealed,
Mm-hmm.
and she was, she was a little bit nervous, and she was, reading from notes, and just to have her, she's such a great speaker when she speaks naturally, and I just thought it was a much better, to have a natural interview.
Yeah, you know what? Usually interviews are better, especially with people who are not normally speakers, who are witnesses or have something really interesting to say. Normally, it is better to have someone interview them. Plus, it's helpful to know that you feel that your interview got more info, because then people can just go to your YouTube and watch that. But the exception to the rule was Emily Trim, another one of the witnesses.
Yes.
She actually went up and did her own thing and read from notes, and she was great. She did a great job at the UFO Congress.
Stood out to me more than any other event, that whole UFO Congress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was emotional, but she got a standing ovation. I remember that whole thing. It was just amazing.
That was a really cool
you're right.
moment.
I forgot she was reading.
Yeah.
But then she totally was. It was so heartfelt. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That was cool.
Something.
That was like one of the best moments at the Congress. But awesome. That's really good to hear, because that was the other person I was really interested in hearing was her, because the Ruwa case is, and I guess we should bring people up to speed. What we're talking about is this case that happened in Ruwa, South Africa, Zimbabwe, actually,
Yep.
and the Ariel School. So there were these kids. They were very young. Do you remember their age?
She was 11. There were younger ones than her. There were older ones than her.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly how many grades were at that particular school. There's 230 students at the school, and about 62 of them did drawings. So they say a lot of times that there was only 62 witnesses, but it's probably more than that. Randy was saying it's probably more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the ones that actually were interviewed and did the drawings, that count was 62.
Mm-hmm. And what these kids say they saw was this craft land near the school. They watched it. Most of them, I don't know if all of them, but I think most of them report some sort of creature coming out of it and looking at them. And
maybe multiple creatures. It's hard. No one can. That's the kind of the controversy. Some saw 2. Some thought they saw more. She remembers 1, but she thinks if there was more, they looked alike.
Mm-hmm.
Very much alike.
Yeah.
And do you want me to just describe how she described the
Sure, that'd be
creature?
great. Yeah.
Okay. So she said, first of all, the unusual thing was it had a skin color pigment that she said she had never, could never imagine or had never seen anything like it. It was almost like she said in the first interview I did with her, it was almost like a porcelain.
Wow.
Had a large head. It was very small in stature, maybe 4 feet. A very large head, and black eyes, and then it was wearing what looked like a scuba suit. She said it might have been shiny. It just may have been the way the light was hitting it. The sunlight was hitting it. But she said the easiest way to describe it was like a skin diver's, rubber suit. And also, but when she said that she was only 4 feet from it, her in particular, and when she locked gaze with it, it was just just the fact that it really drained her. And she said she never remembers ever being more exhausted that day after that. The day after that happened in her entire life, she had never been that tired.
Wow. Yeah, really interesting case, and it came to fame because John Mack, a Harvard professor who was into this sort of thing, as part of a documentary, was sent out there to investigate. And this was part of the investigation, and these children, their testimony was recorded, and it was phenomenal. And really interesting case. Very
consistent. And now the really interesting thing about the film that Randy Nickerson is doing, the Ariel Phenomenon, is that now it goes, 20 years later, or I think it's about, it was 1994. So 24 years later, but it's taken 10 years to make this film, so it depends on what stages he interviews people. But it has shaped all of their lives. Everyone that he interviews, it has actually changed. Some of them it's changed greatly, and some of them took like a possible like demon or devil. They had that kind of feeling about it. But I think one of the most interesting things of that case is that multiple children at the time said that, it was telling us we had to take care of our planet. Yeah. And they had never really thought those thoughts before. Mm-hmm. And another curious thing is they said no one ever saw any TV with any UFO or any aliens. They had no idea what they were seeing. Mm-hmm. It was fresh. They had absolutely no idea what it was they were looking at. Yeah, really cool stuff. So I guess a couple other things, because it's been a little bit, I guess, since I've done a show. The last one was Stanton Friedman at Roswell. But, and I do want to add more, just to clarify, you brought up a good point that this whole thing is part of, and even Emily Trim is Randall Nickerson's film. He's working on a film that'll hopefully be out, a documentary, in the not too distant future. But it also will be part of this project with James Fox that Lee's working on. We don't talk about that in the interview, but they have talked about that in the past, so that's exciting. There's some clips from there added in, and a few things like that, right? Mm-hmm. So cool stuff. I guess what I wanted to mention was the Blue Book television show. So I was at Comic-Con, for those who may not know, and I've got a lot of really cool stuff from Comic-Con, and I'll kind of give you guys an outline of that you should go check out. But one of the really cool things that I did there was, and I was there for Den of Geek doing a bunch of stuff, went to the Blue Book activation. So I don't know why they call exhibits activations there, but they do. But this was this cool exhibit, and it didn't look like much from outside. It was kind of these 3 kind of shipping containers with Project Blue Book written on it, and I've got a picture in my Den of Geek story, and I've posted on my social media this tarp covering what looks like a UFO, and you go through, and it was really, really cool. So it's for this new TV show, Blue Book, that's coming out on the History Channel, that is really about the Blue Book cases, and the starring character is portraying Dr. Hynek, who was a professor, an astronomer, and the consultant to the Blue Book from the 47 to 69 on UFOs, began as a skeptic, ended as someone who thinks this is a real phenomena. I wrote a story about kind of his background and everything on Den of Geek you could check out too. But the activation was really cool, and they what you would do, you walk into the first part, and they debrief you on what Blue Book was and everything, and they ask you how much you knew, and they also ask, have you seen a UFO? To my surprise, they give you one-on-one with someone when you first walk in and sit down. But I was listening to the people around because, that was an interesting question. And sure enough, practically everybody around me, including one of my buddies from Den of Geek, said, yeah, I've seen a sighting. And of course I said yes too, because I have had a sighting. So they ask you to describe it, and they use the actual report form. I did a Facebook Live on this too, so people can see this on my Facebook, my whole visit through there. But they use the form that they used in Blue Book, and they tell you, okay, we're going to give you a sketch of your sighting once you're done. So you go through this whole activation, which is cool. They do some audio from the show. The show sounds great. It sounds very well produced. And the cases that they're covering are real Blue Book cases. Some we know. Lubbock Lights. The Flatwoods Monster. Another one is the Gorman
dogfight, which is this really cool situation. I'm going to write about this really cool sighting where essentially this guy in a P-51 Mustang and like really early, late 40s, got in a kind of a dogfight with a UFO. And then, you go through, you send a message to space and you really do. You get a fashion one, and they're really sending it to space. I warned the aliens personally to stay away, that humans are scary. I think they're kind of scary, don't you?
And you say, and I hope you said they taste awful too, right?
No, I did mention, about the human diet. I did mention that. I said, many of them eat the flesh of other Earthlings. Isn't that gross? And I actually put that in my message. That'll keep them away. Yeah. Yeah, because, like, to me, that's pretty bad. And hopefully the aliens will be the same way and be like, oh my gosh, those barbarians, they're animals. Let's stay away from there.
Depending on what they eat, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't want them to think humans sound delicious. But, you can see my sighting on openminds.tv. I posted the picture that they drew for me and a little history on that sighting that I had. But I'm really looking forward to this TV show. In fact, Lee and I speak about it in this interview.
Yeah, I saw his email he sent out to everyone. All excited about it.
Yep. So I also got to interview Neil deGrasse Tyson, not about UFOs, about the new series of Cosmos coming up. But it was really funny. People get so frustrated. And I posted this comment. I don't know if you saw this, about science. And it was really popular.
What was it?
And essentially, it was in reply because people were really upset, some people, oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't believe in UFOs. Why are you promoting him? He believes this or he says that. And, of course, what he believes and says is based on science. And so I essentially said, just to be clear, everyone, I am a man of science. And if... Oh,
I did see that, yes.
If science offends you, then I can't... There's nothing I can do for you, essentially, if you're offended by the natural world that we live in. Because there's a lot of denial about science, when majority of scientists are telling you something. These are not people who are friends or who are colluding or work for the same people. Scientists are spread throughout the world. They compete with each other. They to check each other's work. And, it's a very open process.
And it's supposed to be open to change.
Yeah. And
if something is proven wrong or right.
Exactly. That's a great point. So, I don't know. If you're curious, I subscribe to science. So, just to clarify with people, I'm not a science basher, or I do not believe science is some big conspiracy.
Right.
But that's where it is.
That's
but
right.
Anybody could check out that interview. It was still a lot of fun. And I don't know. Otherwise, for UFO news, there was one other piece of news George Knapp let out, which was essentially a document for Harry Reid arguing to get kind of more secrecy for their UFO program and to keep it going on. He released that. Now, we've already seen bits of this document or had it described in other articles. But another thing that To the Stars did is they announced that they're building a lab, to examine materials, including these alleged UFO materials they found. So, really interesting stuff. So you can find more about that at To the Stars and, of course, at KLAS, where George Knapp writes.
Well, a lot of people have been questioning, why do they need money and blah blah blah. And here's a good exhibit of what they're actually doing something with the funds.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being on the show again this morning.
You bet. Always fun.
And thanks for taking the time. I hope you didn't get any splinters anywhere.
No, I almost got hauled away a couple times. I'm sure you heard it.
I did hear that. Yeah. All right, great. Thanks. Well, let's get to our interview with Mr. Lee Speigel right after this break. welcome back to Open Minds UFO Radio. If you hear a little bit of excitement in my voice, it's because I am here with Lee Speigel.
Well, wow, what an intro. I didn't know that the mere mention of my name gets you all shivery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, are you kidding? I get so excited. I'm like, that's my buddy Lee.
Well, I'm always happy to be with you on the radio, in person. You're one of my favorite people in the field, and I love what you're doing now. All the stories you've been coming up with. I'm very proud to know you. You're doing a great job.
Well, ditto, my friend. On the radio, whoa. And in fact, you know, I did a talk recently, and you were in it. It turned out.
Oh yeah.
I think it was Spielberg. Oh, Roswell. Yeah, at Roswell I did my Spielberg talk. And, of course, I have that video with you in it. And it's fun because you're talking about your interactions with Steven Spielberg when he offered to help you all with your UN initiative back in the 70s. And, you know, you kind of chuckle along the way. And it was fun because when I showed that video, people were chuckling along with you. So just so you know.
Were they making fun of me?
No, they were laughing with you, not at you. I don't think. Okay. So, but that was a lot of fun. But you're always working on exciting things. You know, we've probably shared this last time. You no longer are writing with the Huffington Post, right, but you are now working on something that is equally, if not more exciting, with with a more exciting. Even though I love Ariana, who isn't even at the Huffington Post, and you know your old editor, Buck. But
yes,
now you're working with some really cool people. So you're working on James Fox's new documentary.
Yes, I am. I am co-producing with James a new documentary film. It's going to be like the third installment of what I like to call his UFO trilogy or series, which began with the first film, Out of the Blue, and that was followed by I Know What I Saw, and then we're going to bring the third one to the public. Hopefully it'll be ready by the end of this year or early next year, right about the same time when there's going to be a new History Channel series about Project Blue Book that's starting to get some previews out there, which I'm a little excited about.
Me too. So that I think everybody's curious about what this will be about. Of course, the original premise and the original title was 701, based off of yes, you know, the 701 unsolved Blue Book cases. Speaking right of Blue Book, however, I think, you know, as many of us researchers know, 701 was kind of an arbitrary number. None of us can even figure out why they threw that number out.
Yeah.
But it's about, right, you know, 600 or so unknowns that Blue Book had. But these aren't just Blue Book cases, or are they even a minority of Blue Book cases? You're covering a lot of stuff now, right?
We're covering stuff that goes back, at least back to the 1940s, and moving all the way up through the 90s and into the present day, and not just American UFO accounts, but we're going international with this thing, and because there's so much has been happening that we've been able to get a hold of. We've got some interviews with people from literally around the world that are going to just take your breath away. It really is amazing. I'm so proud to be working with James Fox because he has a real keen sense of knowing what he wants to see as a final product, as a final vision. And we have been interviewing people, getting exclusive interviews with folks who have been in the news. And the things that they have told us is pretty startling, that you haven't heard from them saying these same kinds of things in the past. And I'm trying not to give too much away, but I will say that, as you know, going back to the 1940s, there's always been a contradiction between what the public has been told about UFOs and what has been quietly, officially determined going on behind closed doors. And that's what we're kind of aiming at. We're very concerned about, you know, who's in control of what's really going on here. And we think that it's not so much that the government has been either lying or just covering up, or all the conspiracies. We are more concerned about how the nations of the world haven't really come clean about UFOs because of the possibility that they just don't know the answers. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. You know, people want to get. You hear all people constantly claiming, why haven't everybody come clean? Why hasn't there been disclosure? Why haven't UFOs landed on the White House lawn or in front of the Kremlin? What's wrong? Why is there too much secrecy? Well, you know, from what we are researching and uncovering, there are plenty of reasons for secrecy. And I'm of the mind now, I didn't used to be, but now I can kind of understand why not all of the information has been leaked or given to the public. And I only know this now from the people we've been talking to.
Right.
And this has really opened up my eyes to what's kind of going on. I mean, one very highly placed politician, and I will not mention his name because it'll be kind of a surprise when people see him in our documentary. But he said to us, you know, most, if not all, presidents are not in the loop about what's really going on about UFOs. When they're elected, they are elected to be basically the executives or the executors of the country, deal with the business of the country and the business of relationships with other countries and all of that. But the presidents apparently don't know, or they don't have a need to know. They don't have a high enough security clearance to know what's really happening with UFOs. And in fact, I'll even give you this bit. We're going to show a video, because we didn't do the interview ourselves. This was done several years ago, of Bill Clinton when he was on stage at a presentation in Hong Kong, I believe.
Oh, I love that video.
Yeah, it's really something. And someone asked him from the audience, someone said, what can you tell us about Area 51 or what really happened at Roswell? And Clinton didn't make fun of it like he did a year or two ago on Jimmy Kimmel's show. He actually said, and you can just look at the video, and he says, you know, I wouldn't be the first president whose staff or underlings kept information from him and just waited me out until I was out of office, and then they started up again with the next guy to come into office. What a statement.
I think that is an important statement, and that concept as well, that information is kept from high-level people in the government, sometimes even to protect them, you know, as far as, you know, deniability goes, that they are kept in the dark so that they, if something should happen, they can say, I didn't know, and honestly reply, I didn't know, because they weren't told. And sometimes it's in the spirit of protection that that information is not given to them. But, you know, it's funny, because being journalists, it's, when things are always much more complicated than they appear to be on the surface.
Right.
And I don't know if you feel this way as well, but when you start to dig and figure out what's going on, it's so complicated and difficult, and there's so many difficult decisions that have to be made.
Right.
That often it feels like, and I feel like this, that I'm going to cover what I can. I'm going to try to share whatever I can get cleared to be shared. And thank goodness I'm not the one making the decisions. And you become less judgmental because it's like, these are really difficult decisions to make.
Right. And you know, part of this picture that can be very frustrating is when you consider not just the hard-nosed skeptics, but the debunkers who continually, ongoing, maintain that there's nothing there that should be looked at. There's nothing worthy of any scientific investigation. The people who are making these reports are either mistaking planetary objects or weather inversions or manifestations, and people are they're just not really getting the idea that there can't possibly be any visitation from afar happening to planet Earth. And it's important to them because they know they're getting away with it, because all they have to do is say, well, where's the evidence? Show me something. Show me a ship. Show me a creature. Show me, you know, anything. And they know that that's a very difficult thing to come up with. And then they maintain, well, you can't really keep something like this secret. Well, you can. Our friend Stan Friedman, the nuclear physicist, loves to tell people that there were thousands of people involved with the creation of like the first atomic bombs, and everybody was sworn to secrecy, which is why it was kept secret. And nobody leaked out that information before we used the atomic bomb. So yeah, you can keep something secret if you do it the right way.
You know, and we have a great example of that in this Pentagon program that Luis Elizondo worked for. And I think it's the perfect example because this is kind of the untold story, or at least the less of a deal is made about this. We didn't know. You and I have interviewed people who were part of BASS, of Bigelow. Right. We knew about BASS. Not even very many people knew Bigelow had this group, BASS, that was looking into the paranormal. Right. We worked with and interviewed people. We're very close, even friends with some of these people who were in the know or who were even contracted to do this, and we had no clue. Even people who were possibly or probably even received funding from BASS. Well, I know that did receive funding from BASS and were working on these projects. They didn't even know. It's a perfect example that this UFO project was going on and interacting with all of us, and we had no clue that this government UFO thing was going on.
Yeah, it's like you and I both know very well Chuck Halt, for example, retired Air Force. I forget what his final rank was, but he was one of the people, one of the eyewitnesses. He was very involved with the Bentwaters, England UFO event of, was it 1980 or was it 89? I forget the date offhand, but there was like a series of events at that dual Air Force base in the United Kingdom where many military eyewitnesses had close encounters with some amazing things going on in and out of the woods in the area, and Chuck Halt was one of them, and he now has said that there was so much going on there that now he said for any people in the public who believes that there's nothing to UFOs and that the United States or other governments are not studying this stuff at all, you're completely naive to think that, he says. He says, of course, there is behind the scenes ongoing research and investigation happening. And part of the problem is that there's so many little compartmentalized divisions that are looking into different aspects of it that one hand doesn't know what the other hand is looking into. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the problem. It's a much bigger thing than people realize. It's that kind of thing. I keep coming back to the final speech that Dwight Eisenhower made, his last speech in office when he was saying goodbye to the presidency and to the public, and he warned everybody to be aware of the military-industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
It's a famous quote, and he knew what he was talking about. And now we see that really the military is so much more powerful than it ever used to be, and it's hard to get around because they don't want to share information with other countries. Why should they? Everybody wants to be the best. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to have the best stealth bombers. Well, why do we need stealth bombers? Because we don't trust anybody.
Yeah.
And they don't trust us. That's the problem. People say, well, why won't ET visitors come down and make friends with us? Well, why should they? Mm-hmm. I mean, if they're out there, they must be smart enough to know what kind of people we are, and why would they want to invite us to be part of their collective club or their federation? All we are is a warmongering species down there. They don't want to play with us.
And another story that I think is really important that you touched on here. Mm-hmm. Just now is that you're including is this idea, what you said earlier, is that, there is much more going on behind the scenes than people realize, in that publicly the government, the military is like, oh, UFOs are silly. We don't care about any of that stuff. But behind the scenes, there are debates and struggles. And we know that more about that, and like you said, you've got interviews that are going to demonstrate this as well. That yes. This has not been, Charles Haught is a good example, but this has not been a question that has been definitively answered behind the scenes. There's still movement and debate, and even dollars being spent on all this. Oh yeah, and dollars that may or may not be out of our tax dollars. The whole black budget of like just the United States government. Who knows how much money they're spending? I mean, the whole Pentagon thing that you talked about, was it $22 million that was initially raised? I mean, that's not a lot of money to spend on several year study of UFOs. I mean, most people know that the government spends money like they could spend like $1 million on a toilet seat. Mm-hmm. and not think anything about it. So it's where the money goes. It's where the money came from. And once they learn different things, how do they decide what, if anything, they want to give out to the public to demonstrate transparency in the government? Everybody talks about, why isn't the government being transparent? The problem I see here is, people have to start realizing it's not just the American government that's involved with this. We're talking about most countries around the world have been inundated with UFOs for decades. And what leader of any country on Earth is willing to make a statement to tell his or her citizens that there are things that are flying around in our skies, and they're able to, I mean, with flight characteristics that clearly demonstrate some technology that's light years in advance of any country on Earth. They have the ability to accelerate from a standstill. They can go out of sight in the blink of an eye. They can do right-angle turns at high speed. And all of this without any visible means of propulsion or wings or air disturbance or noise. We don't have anything like that. So why would any leader want to say to the populations of their countries, yes, there are things in the atmosphere above our country. We can't touch them. We've sent jets up to intercept them. We can't get really close to them. They outmaneuver everything we have.
we realize that we're supposed to protect the airspace above our country and to protect you, our citizens, but we're sorry, we don't have an explanation for this, and so we can't tell you what we think they might be. That's tough. I mean, that's a tough decision that leaders have to make.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, this is far more complex and complicated than people think.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it is. It's just far more complicated, and that's what's wonderful about what James Fox does. I mean, he's got some of the best documentaries out there with I Know What I Saw and Out of the Blue.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting about what you all are doing with this documentary, because you're tackling, this complicated world, and you are penetrating these kind of government firewalls, really, and in order to get interviews and information out to the public that in a concise and digestible way. And I say all this, you having not seen the documentary, but knowing your work and James's work and some of who you've talked to. So it's very, very exciting, and people were excited with 701, but this is much more exciting than the scope of 701. This is for the here and the now in today's world, and I almost like kind of a stat check. Here we are with UFOs today.
Yeah, and I will tease you with something.
Ooh.
James would probably slap me on the wrist.
Mm-hmm.
But he's on his way to China right now, so he can't reach out and hit me.
He's too busy to listen to the podcast, so
I will give you this, but without more details. You mentioned before that I had put together this presentation at the United Nations in 1978, which featured speakers. This is something that is easy to find on the internet, of J. Allen Hynek, Jacques Vallée, Stanton Friedman, Army Lieutenant Colonel Larry Coyne, who was the commander of a 4-man helicopter crew, who almost had a near collision with a UFO over Ohio in 1973. That was one of the cases that really flipped me around and got me really interested in this whole subject, because that was such a credible case, and it's held up over all of these years because of who these men were and what they experienced. And so I was able to get Colonel Coyne to come to the United Nations,
mm-hmm.
and to tell his story.
You got a minute to make your point, just so you know.
Okay. What I'm saying is, people are going to see in this documentary, we are finally going to show some footage from that United Nations presentation. People, and including myself, have been looking for this footage for 40 years, and we have found it.
Which is so exciting, because Open Minds, to plug us, .tv,
yes.
We're so far the only ones with footage, but it's super 16 millimeter. It's kind of funky. It's got that Stranger Things kind of vibe. But you're talking about professionally shot stuff here.
Oh yeah. What Open Minds had was about 1:15 of only some visual excerpts and no sound.
Yeah, right.
What we've got is the real thing.
Whoa, the real deal, Holyfield.
And I'm so excited to even present small.
We got to go to break.
Okay.
So thank you. Good drop going into the break. So you're listening to Open Minds UFO Radio, and we're talking to Lee Speigel, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Open Minds UFO Radio. I'm your host, Alejandro Rojas, and we are here with one of my best friends in the world, Lee Speigel. Also, one of my favorite UFO writers, researchers, just UFO dudes.
UFO dude. I like that. I should put that on. I should put that on a T-shirt and have it say, "I'm a UFO dude."
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Well, thank you for that. You're one of my all-time favorite people in or out of the UFO world.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Sure.
So, this is fun. So you're friends with Jacques Vallée.
I am.
And you speak to him occasionally, and I guess he's going to be interviewed in the documentary.
Oh yes, we've already done our interview with Jacques, and he was very gracious to agree to the interview. He had a lot of things to say that I think he's been thinking about for many years, because he doesn't do very many interviews. Or even show up at many UFO conferences or symposia. And so he wanted to talk about some things that go back historically for him decades. And we were happy to talk with him. And again, like many of the people in our program, he will be saying some things that are pretty startling, as are most of the people that are in our show. It's amazing. James Fox and I will be sitting there at the editing screen, and we'll be going over all the interviews that we've done so far. And no matter how many times we look at these things over and over again, we're still amazed at what we're hearing from these people. It's like, pinch me. This can't be real stuff, but it is real stuff. And that's why I got involved with this presentation, because it's James Fox, and I respect and I admire him. And when he asked me to come on board to be part of this presentation, I said, yes, of course, let's work it out. And now we've been working on this together for just over a year. So yeah, it's a great experience for me, because I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see we both have the vision of what this is going to look like when it's all done, all edited, and we're very happy with how it's moving along right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of fun because Jacques has come up, at least for me, more frequently. I think he's a very important figure, and especially with J. Allen Hynek getting so much more attention these days.
Yeah.
And Jacques, of course, being his kind of protege. How old is Jacques now?
I think he's 79.
Really?
Yeah.
So, and he is held up so well.
Oh yes, yeah. He's really amazing. I was just talking to him the other day, and I said, "How are you feeling?" He said, "Well, okay." And I said, well, no, I don't want to hear okay. I always want you to tell me you're feeling excellent. He said, okay, I'm feeling excellent today.
I mean, he's really just physically, he seems to be doing very well. And he's got a lot of energy and spunk. And the reason I say that is because, he's commented on a couple things lately. And in particular, and I do want to talk about this, Blue Book. So this new movie's coming out. Of course, you knew Hynek, and you also, in this UN thing, you worked with him and many other things. You've interviewed him. You and Jacques and he went to go visit Spielberg in that incident that I mentioned earlier, your Spielberg encounter. But and of course, if people want to see Lee talking about this, you can go to our Open Minds YouTube, and we have a great YouTube where Lee kind of talks about that whole encounter. But this Project Blue Book, I think this is really exciting that, Hynek is being a central character. And I wrote this in my story on Den of Geek about Project Blue Book, is it feels like something's right in the universe when what I think is kind of the first, to me, real major follow-up to the X-Files fame is this UFO project by History that has Hynek and real Blue Book files. Of course, they're going to dramatize things and everything.
Right.
But having seen the recent trailer, and I know you've been paying attention to this upcoming show, what do you think?
I think that it's okay. You know, it's not being presented as a documentary. It's being presented as a drama series. And so I already kind of figure that liberties will be taken to increase the drama of it. I mean, I've always said, when it comes to UFO things, you don't have to do that. You don't have to over-enhance the drama, because by its very nature, a lot of UFO stories are very dramatic. You don't have to add any extras to it.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've seen in the trailer, I have the feeling that they're going to go overboard a little bit. But I think that what will happen is the viewers will really be attracted to it, because it looks like the production values are pretty high.
Yeah.
The fact that it's being brought to us by Robert Zemeckis, who gave us all three installments of Back to the Future and Contact. I think, and I'm a big admirer of his work, and I think that it'll be okay for it to be dramatic as long as they don't go way overboard.
Yeah.
Because I hope that their purpose is not to try and get the public to believe, for example, that maybe Dr. Hynek was shown alien bodies floating in formaldehyde tubes, or stuff like that. I don't think that they're going to pay as much attention to the facts and just the facts. I think it's entertainment. They want to attract a big audience. I think they're going to get an audience. I'm going to watch it. I know you will.
Oh, yeah.
Even our mutual friend, George Knapp, the multi-Emmy award-winning news reporter from KLAS TV in Las Vegas, he's going to watch it. He's already...
How do you know that?
Because he wrote on an email the other day.
Oh, yeah.
In which he said... that even though many people feel like it's been a long time since the History Channel actually dealt with history, he said this upcoming show, he said, it's not a documentary, it's drama, so you can expect that they're going to take liberties. And then he went on to say, but this trailer is very cool, and I'm going to watch this thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
Everything's been taken over by reality TV, and it is nice that History Channel is going to get back to doing some history, just like National Geographic has gotten back to doing some science and history, which to me is really exciting. Of course, I get to be involved with a lot of these things they're promoting, but of course, Cosmos, Mars, the whole Genius series. I don't know if you've watched those, but they're Vikings. They're all really good programs, and for the most part educational. Now, with Blue Book, I have a little bit of a different perspective on the dramatizing of these UFO events, and it's because of Travis Walton. Travis Walton's of what happened on the craft in the movie is complete BS. I mean, it's totally made up, and that's, I think, an example of going too far. But being the gracious person he is, he makes a point that it does, though, portray the fear, the sheer terror that he felt at that moment, or he remembers feeling. And so it looks like, for the most part, they're going to stick in Blue Book to how the cases occurred, but of course dramatize them, which might be good because no doubt, you know this also from speaking to witnesses, when people experience something that they can't explain, it is a very emotional, dramatic experience.
It is. And one of the things that I always like to caution people about is that when they do have the nerve to come forward and admit that they've had some kind of an experience, it's really important that the skeptics and the debunkers should not just come crawling out of the wall again and start saying things that will ridicule these eyewitnesses. We don't need ridicule in this category of UFOs. It's just not a good thing. It doesn't serve any purpose. If you don't believe something happened to someone, fine, that's your opinion. But don't go out of your way to ridicule their stories. I like to say, I think that there's one very important truth about everything involved with UFOs. Everything. I can very clearly state that the one important truth that covers it all is this. No matter what kind of UFO case we're talking about, no matter if you believe or don't believe, everybody has an opinion. And that's the most simple, honest, ongoing truth. That's the truth. Everybody has an opinion, and how they share these opinions with themselves, with their friends, with the rest of the world, that's really important, because words can change and can affect a lot of people. And so I always like to hope that people are going to share their opinions in the best non-ridicule way when it comes to UFO eyewitnesses. That's really important.
You know what? And what you're saying is more prescient today than ever, especially given, and I feel bad for them. And of course, you and I have had to deal with this for years, and we've come to, I was going to say we've come to peace with it, but not necessarily. Probably right. You more so than me it gets under our skin. But, all of these celebrities who, like this poor Star Wars actress, who just because she's a young Asian person and people felt that she was, it was silly to add her to the Star Wars canon, they attack her with racist attacks and just, her personally. It wasn't even her decision to create this character, of which I think she did a great job personally, and I love the character myself. And so she cancels her account. It's happened with, in actually Comic-Con this year, there were several different controversies like this that caused these actors or actresses to cancel their accounts. And so many people who are in the public eye don't even get on social media because people are so mean.
Yes. Yeah, and there's no reason for it. There's no good place for it. It doesn't belong in any kind of social media. I think that if people have nothing good to say or nothing positive or constructive or supportive to say to people or about people who are just trying to get on with their lives, with or without close encounters, if you don't have anything good to say, just shut up.
Or if you want to go complain, go to some forum where everybody's complaining.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of that stuff out there. You don't have to just make it your mission to put someone down simply because you don't believe that their story is real, or you don't believe that they were in this movie because they're of a particular ethnic background. It's not your place to say. Opinions should not hold that much weight, I believe.
Except for Jacques.
Except for Jacques.
Getting back to Jacques' opinions in that, but he, of course, is not bashing people. He's being very respectful. He has concerns about the accuracy of this new program, especially when they say things like that, the Blue Book was top secret when it wasn't, right. And some details like that, which I can understand those concerns. At the same time, Hynek didn't like Close Encounters for those same reasons, and you and I have discussed this before. Yeah. Whereas I love Close Encounters. I'm very excited about Blue Book, and I think potentially. And so, as a researcher, someone who spent your life to try to decipher what happened and document as accurately as possible these events, when you've worked so hard to obtain that accuracy, that level of you're trying to get perfect accuracy, I can see how it'd be frustrating when people screw with that.
Yeah.
But
I see examples of this. Maybe you do too. Every day when I read reviews, book reviews, or movie reviews by people who shouldn't be writing these kinds of things because they're not dealing with the facts, or they don't seem to care about what they're writing about. They're just putting words together, thinking that it makes sense, and I get really frustrated because when I worked at Huffington Post, I wasn't just a writer; I was a copy editor as well, and so I developed this knack or this instinct of reading other people's stories, and part of my job was to correct or make suggestions of how something could read better. And there's so much of this non-good editing stuff floating around everywhere in journalism. Oh, everywhere.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing, and what I like about you is that you at least you come across in your work as someone who cares about what he's writing about. You're not just pulling ideas from this place and that place for the sheer joy of ridiculing someone or pulling something apart. You're actually coming across like you've looked into this, you've made calls, you've done interviews, and you have formed a valid opinion about what you're writing about. Most people who write this kind of stuff, they don't do the legwork as well as you do.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, I know that the same is true of you, even more so. I mean, you're even more adamant about making sure you get firsthand interviews when you write a piece. And, you're part of the old guard, the old school of journalism where you have original, pieces that sufficiently tell the story. And it's just journalism, as you know, is really tough these days. I mean, I visited that Huffington Post office, and it was mostly 20 people in their 20s, and I mean people around 20 years old, maybe even less. I mean, and it's this quick hit, it's this very few words, get the information out as quickly as possible, and it's just journalism is in a hard space right now with everything online, where it's kind of like, the Old West. Everybody's still trying to make it up and figure out this new digital world of relaying information, which used to be, the realm of journalism and publications, and it's all changed. So, yeah, and I think that it's hard, but I agree with, you're a good mentor, and so is George Knapp, that you have to do your due diligence. You have to do the research, and I don't feel comfortable writing about something unless I understand it. So I've got to do the research and until it makes sense. And once it makes sense, be like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I have a perspective. Now I can, lay something down.
Yeah, one of the problems that's come along in journalism over the years, and you know because you've been part of this, is this whole concept of blogging.
Yeah.
Oh man, people feel like, wow, I can become a blogger, which means I'm not going to be working for the company that I'm blogging for, so I can write whatever I want, and nobody's going to proofread what I write. So if I make mistakes, nobody's going to know. Well, I mean, and that's running rampant throughout the world of journalism. That's a big problem.
So we're running out of time, but for journalists who, budding journalists or bloggers out there, visit a site called Grammarly. It saves my butt, and it's an awesome site that will actually help proofread your document. Even if you have an editor, it's good to do this first because it also helps you in, placement of your words and everything to make sure that you're being as clear and concise as possible. So it's a great site. I recommend it to anybody. But we're pretty much out of time. When do you feel the audience might be able to get their first look at the new documentary with no name?
Well,
because it doesn't have a name yet, right?
Well, we have a working title, but we're not even letting that out yet because we may decide to keep it. Mm-hmm. But we actually have like a growing list of some possible titles.
Like a baby name list.
Yeah, we want to make sure that it's a really good title. Right now we're on track of having a rough cut of the completed program by mid to late September. So that's right around the corner. And we certainly want to put a trailer together, and we will. I can't wait to see the trailer because there are so many individual segments that we're working with and so many images that are in my mind every day of what we can put into this trailer. But I will just say this. It's a little bit of a tease. The opening 4 minutes of our program is going to blow people away.
I believe it. I am so excited about it. So thank you once again for being on the show, Lee.
Oh, thank you, Alejandro. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much to Lee Speigel for being on the show once again. He's always so much fun. And how amazing does this documentary look? Pretty dang cool. And I want to say, there is so much. That's what's fun talking to Lee today and why I wanted to talk to him. There's so much exciting stuff going on when it comes to UFO research and the whole idea of this mystery being legit, getting credibility. There are a lot of people in some circles saying there's nothing going on, that it's bland and stagnant, and that is so much not the case. This is historic stuff that we're dealing with right now. This is really game-changing stuff, and I think that a lot of people have subscribed to certain worldviews, and they feel that if that doesn't get acknowledged, then they're frustrated. But you know what? This is how science, this is how the mainstream works. It's got to work slow. You got to build on very strong, foundation to really get something to have legs and to make a big difference. And that's what's happening right now. So I think it's an exciting time. I'm really excited about all of this. So it's a lot of fun to talk to people like Lee who have been around for so long and working on this for so long to check all this stuff out. I want to talk about the UFO Congress also. UFOcongress.com. Go there. There's some really cool stuff. We have these glow-in-the-dark alien hats. Also, the really cool UFO Congress trucker hats. We've got more in stock. And a lot more T-shirts, especially the black T-shirts with the aliens and stuff. Really, really cool stuff. We've been going to some conferences and selling at things. And our stuff is super popular, especially as you can imagine, a glow-in-the-dark alien hat. I mean, come on. They are really, really cool. In fact, we'll get some more glow-in-the-dark stuff coming up, too. We also have some videos. So we posted some free videos. We posted some videos of UFO Jeopardy, which is a lot of fun. So those are some UFO researchers, and we all get together and do like this Jeopardy game. They're really fun. They're really funny. So I hope you like those out. Check out the UFO Congress YouTube for that. And otherwise, yeah, like I said, the store's got lots of new stuff, and we're putting out new stuff all the time. Also, you can go to openminds.tv to read some about the news that Martin and I talked about, and you can also go to openminds.tv to see some of those videos that I mentioned and my own UFO sighting. In fact, go to my Facebook to see the Facebook Live of the Blue Book event and everything. So check out my social media for that as well. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to Caleb Hanks for the opening and close music. Thank you to Systematics for the bumper music. And thank you to Martin Willis of Podcast UFO for joining us at the beginning. You all have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon. Adios, muchachos.